Ever wondered why some countries never seem to break free from poverty and instability? What's really behind the downfall of nations? Corruption, the silent killer that's tearing countries apart at the seams. What happens when greed takes precedence over the welfare of society? This horrifying truth behind corruption and its devastating impact on the collapse of entire countries. It's a story of power, betrayal, and the fight for justice that affects us all. Corruption is like a big, sneaky problem in the United States that makes things unfair and hurts how the country runs. Imagine if some people in charge, like leaders and big bosses, were cheating to get what they want, leaving everyone else feeling left out and upset. This cheating makes people lose trust in those leaders and even in how decisions are made. When people don't trust the leaders anymore, they might not want to vote or help in their communities, which is really bad for everyone. Because of this cheating, a few people end up with a lot of power, and that's not fair because in a true team, everyone's voice should matter. When there's no one checking on these cheaters or making sure they're playing by the rules, they could take over and make all the decisions without listening to anyone else. That's not how things should work, and it can lead to even bigger problems. When people keep cheating in important jobs, like in the government, everyone starts to think the system is unfair and stops trusting it. Imagine if you're playing a game where one player keeps breaking the rules and always wins. Soon, you might not want to play anymore. This is what happens when there's a lot of cheating in places that make big decisions. Fewer people want to be involved, like voting or helping out in their town, and more people might get really upset or stop caring about these important rules and decisions. The word corruption comes from a Latin word corruptus, which means something that has gone bad or rotten. When we talk about corruption in a legal sense, it's like someone who is supposed to do an important job decides to be sneaky for their own benefit or to help their friends instead of doing what's right and fair for everyone. Corruption is like a big bad monster that causes a lot of problems, especially in many African countries. People think of it as a huge villain that stops these countries from growing and getting better in terms of schools, hospitals, and roads. Instead of disappearing, the people doing the cheating just keep coming up with new sneaky ways to stay ahead. Corruption is really bad for any country, but it's super bad for countries that are still trying to grow strong and wealthy. It's like having a big hole in your pocket when you're trying to save money. No matter how much you put in, it just keeps falling out because of the hole. Recently, a group of countries called BRICS, which includes Russia, India, China, and South Africa, are trying really hard to fight this corruption monster. Among these countries, Russia is seen as having the biggest problem with corruption, kind of like being the top spot no one wants. These countries are working on plans to beat corruption and make things better for everyone. In 2022, the United States got a score of 69 for how well it was doing in fighting corruption, which is like getting points for being good and fair. A long time ago, when the United States was just starting, people were really upset with the British king and his friends because they were not playing fair. The people who started the US wanted to make sure that no one could cheat like that again. So they came up with a plan to spread out power into different branches, like having a principal, the president, teachers, Congress, and hall monitors, the courts, so that no one could have all the control and start being unfair. They also said that everyone could join their own groups without the government saying no. This was really different from some places in Europe back then, where the government had a say in almost everything people did together. This way, people could talk and work together to make sure everyone was playing by the rules. Back when the United States was just getting started, a guy named Alexander Hamilton had some ideas about how to handle money and banks. Some people worried that his plans might lead to cheating and unfairness, so they formed a group called the Democratic Republican Party to stand against him. Later on, in a big election, a man named Andrew Jackson said he was against cheating in politics. But when he didn't win, some people thought it was because of a shady deal, which they called a corrupt bargain. Then, when Jackson finally became president, there was more arguing about how to handle banks and money, and whether that might lead to more cheating. In the past, when new businesses wanted to start up, they needed permission from the government, called a corporate charter. Some people worried that these charters could lead to shady deals, because sometimes they were given to friends of the politicians instead of being fair. For example, a group called the Albany Regency gave out charters for banks to their buddies in return for help in politics and money. But later on, the government made rules to make sure that giving out charters was fair for everyone. They did this in the 1840s by making a standard way for businesses to get permission to start up. During a time called the Gilded Age, the United States was growing really fast and making lots of money. But at the same time, there was more cheating and bribes happening in the government and businesses. One big problem was the spoils system, where people got jobs in the government just because they helped a politician, not because they were good at the job. They fixed this problem by changing how government jobs were given out, making it fairer for everyone. When a country has a lot of corruption, it can't work well or make enough money for everyone. Corruption happens when people cheat in how they make deals or run businesses. This means that some businesses can become really powerful and control everything. They might do this by paying off government people or using their money to control the rules. When a business becomes the only one selling something, like building houses, they can keep their prices really high because there's no one else to compete with. And since they don't have to try hard to be better than anyone else, the quality of what they sell might not be very good either. Plus, the money they spent on cheating gets added to the prices, so everything costs even more. For example, if a company had to pay bribes to be allowed to build houses, they'll make those bribes back by charging more for the houses. This means people have to pay more money for things they need, like homes, which isn't fair. In countries with a lot of corruption, there's usually not a big group of middle-class people. Instead, there are a few very rich people and a lot of poor people. This happens because the rich folks and their friends who cheat with the government get most of the money. In a corrupt place, it's hard for small businesses to do well because big companies, who are friends with the government, make it tough for them. They might even use illegal tricks to keep the small businesses from succeeding. Some industries, like construction or mining, are more likely to be corrupt, so it's even harder for small businesses in those areas to do well. In countries with a lot of corruption, small businesses often don't want to register officially with the government to avoid paying taxes. This means the money they make isn't counted in the country's official records, so they don't have to pay taxes on it. The problem with these businesses being in the shadows is that they can get away with paying their workers less money than what's fair, sometimes even less than what the government says is the minimum. They also don't have to give their employees good benefits like health insurance. So, while these businesses might save money, it's not fair to the workers who deserve better pay and benefits. In countries where corruption is widespread, the legal system can't be trusted to protect new ideas and inventions. Inventors worry that their hard work might be stolen by people who can bribe their way out of trouble. This uncertainty discourages people from coming up with new ideas and inventions, so these countries often have to rely on technology from other places instead of creating their own. Corruption also hurts education and healthcare in these countries. When people have to pay bribes or use connections to get ahead in these fields, it means that the best teachers and doctors might not be the ones chosen. This lowers the quality of education and healthcare, which is really important for a country to grow and be healthy.